Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the ATACS podcast. We are adults who talk about cool stuff, and today we are talking about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I am your host today, Flex from Raleigh, North Carolina. It is September 18th, 2025, and I am joined by two fellow expeditioners today. We have Nate from Clayton, North Carolina. How are you today, Nate?
Doing good, ready to set forth on this expedition for those who come after.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we also have Will from... Where do you live now, Will? Wendell?
I'm in Wendell.
All right, still in Wendell. How are you today, sir?
I'm pretty good, you know. I mean, basically, I'm the fastest ball, you know. So,
Yeah. And now you got to say the line. You got...
no.
You got the one Nate said.
What, for those who come after? Is that
There you go. Good boy.
There we go.
How do you guys pronounce the name of this game?
Clair
Obscur.
Obscure?
Yeah. I noticed you put a little oomph on something in there. I wasn't quite picking up what you were putting down.
In the songs in the game, they say the name of the game, and I'm not French. I don't speak French. I don't know that I can do the accent they do.
Sure.
So for this podcast, I'm just going to say Clair Obscur, and I'm 99% sure that's not the appropriate pronunciation. But none of us are French, so who cares?
Yeah.
Baguette.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like the AI overview is telling me that it's Clair Obscur.
Obscur?
Obscur.
That doesn't sound French to me.
No. I think it kind of is that without as much drawl on it as you're putting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'll practice that for later.
I'm probably not going to.
All right. Yeah, we are talking about 2025's hit game, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This is a spoiler cast, so there will be spoilers abound. Anything and everything is on the table. If you do not want to be spoiled about Clair Obscur Expedition 33, then you should leave now, because we're going to do it. There also may be minor spoilers to other JRPGs that this game evokes and references. I will call those out when they happen. They won't be big or long, and it may not come up at all. We'll see. But I will give that forewarning up front, and I will mention them before I say anything about any other game. All right, let's dig into this video game. So this is a game from Sandfall. Is that their name?
That sounds like Sandfall, yeah.
A relatively smallish team. And this game has seemingly taken the world by storm. It is an RPG, a French RPG, if you will, with turn-based combat, but also some action elements, some parrying, some timed button presses, kind of in vein of like a Mario RPG type thing. But the parrying is kind of a new thing. And the world is very interesting, and we're definitely going to talk about that a lot. And the structure is also a lot like, I guess, maybe this is where we'll start, is kind of comparing it to its like structure to kind of classic RPGs, in particular JRPGs, which they explicitly said they were kind of making this as a throwback to. One thing I do really appreciate about this game is where most RPGs nowadays feel like they're a minimum of 60 hours long or something. Clair Obscur is more of like, if you critical path it, would probably be like a 20 to 30 hour game maybe.
Yeah. I think my overall time was like 45 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you can like double that if you do everything. You could, I think my time was like 70-ish or something, and I did pretty much everything. But and that's in line with what I think of as like the like 90s era JRPGs, so to speak. Like a critical path would be like 30-ish hours, and then if you did everything, it'd be like 60. And at night, after playing so many stupidly long 100+ hour RPGs in the past few years, it was really nice to have one that was shorter. Just gonna say that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the structure of this game, I guess, it's you start off in Lumiere, kind of the main city, and after the prologue section, which we'll talk about what happens there in a little bit, it is kind of that balance of, okay, we like go through a dungeony area. There's a world map, which has also been a while since I feel like an RPG has had a world map like this. Another throwback. You go through dungeons. Sometimes go into towns where you can buy stuff. There are side quests you get from people. Kind of that classic JRPG adjacent flow, I guess. How did you guys find that? And I know we have some different experience with those types of games. So I guess the general question I'll throw out to you guys is like, how did you like its structure and its like briskness of pace and all of that stuff?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I definitely came from growing up with those, 90s PlayStation 1 JRPGs, and this does kind of evoke a lot of that style. Kind of puts you in that kind of frame of mind that those games would kind of have, or at least in like nostalgia for those games, like how it felt playing those games of like moving really quickly, from area to area, like spanning a large world, and just like, I don't know, the first time it dumps you out onto the world map, it's a pretty good couple of hours into the game. And so like there's pretty heavy like cutscene and exposition stuff to kind of front load, and then you kind of go through the first area, and then it dumps you out on the world map. And I was like, oh, hey, I'm like a little dude walking around in a big map where the enemies are really big too, and it looks kind of silly, but it evokes like a very specific thing from that era of JRPGs. And I think a lot of how this game kind of presents itself does fall in line with that, with like characters that have very like big personalities and like are introduced and like assimilated into your roster very quickly, in ways that are like kind of hand wavy, but like just feels very like genuine and of a type of story that they're kind of telling. So like I liked all that stuff. I like the pacing generally of the game. Like if I look at it at the big picture view, right, from start to finish, like it felt like they had a lot of content. They didn't, just try to like, I don't know, drag out certain parts of the game to make it longer. It didn't feel super padded out to me. So yeah, I mean, overall that stuff definitely worked.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point about how the way characters get recruited, because it seems like, why is this character joining our party and not others? It's just kind of like hand waved away sometimes, but it also makes a lot of sense here.
Yeah,
or like
the way it is.
I shouldn't say makes a lot of sense. It works.
Yeah.
And another thing, when you were talking about the world map, we also get basically your classic, like, first you get like a land vehicle that opens up new parts of the map, and then you basically get a boat, and then you basically get an airship.
Yeah, and they're all the same thing.
Yeah,
he gets new
in this
powers.
game they're all Esquie.
Yeah,
functionally it's the same as getting like, I don't know, a chocobo, then a boat, and then an airship.
Yeah, which is very funny.
Yeah. What about you, Will? How'd you like the overall structure and pacing and everything?
I was kind of, I guess, maybe a tiny bit of a hype chaser here. Like it wasn't one of the reasons I was drawn to it, and I also probably have easily way less experience with either one of you with JRPGs. So I didn't pick up on like, oh, when I got dumped on the world map, I wasn't like, oh, this is kind of like, I was just like, all right, well, there's some enemies, here we go.
Yeah, I was curious, did that moment feel weird for you, or like, I guess, how did you?
It did. It did a little bit. It felt kind of I remember feeling overwhelmed, pretty overwhelmed at that point because, I think I walked over to like it was called like the Abyss Woods or something like that, and then it gave me that little it was like danger, and then I moved forward, and then there were like I kept seeing those things everywhere, like those little spirals that meant you were going to go into a new spot, and I was like, how do I know which one of these that I'm supposed to go into? And I don't know. I think I have a tendency to just assume that I'm going to be bad at whatever mechanic the game has. And so, I was like very vigilant about like, well, am I supposed to be here yet? I'm not the type of person who like rams my head against much. It's like before I'm like, uh-oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be in this spot, So I found that a little bit overwhelming, but I found it also very clear, in terms of like what was happening and where I was going and what would result in an encounter. And, the spaces were designed kind of interesting. A lot of times you're like, huh, I bet there's something over there. You go over there and there's a color of lumina or whatever, those little
Mhm.
point things. But yeah, I didn't. All of the references to past JRPGs were totally lost on me. So I
Yeah.
was like, Esquie seems fun, cool, like
He is fun.
you
You're
know,
you're not wrong. He's very fun.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
So
and I think this game works for people with or without that kind of history. Like, I don't think you need it. I think it's more of like I don't
I
know.
mean, I enjoyed it. You know,
Yeah, yeah, and you kind of make a good point about like I think the game's very good about indicating where the main quest is and
Mhm.
what's a main quest, what's an optional thing to do, and also letting you know when, hey, maybe this optional thing is too high level for you right now. I think it does a good job of just kind of like giving those indicators.
Yeah, yeah. On the world map, it was the main objective was always kind of like this sort of red circle and cross on whatever place you were supposed to go next. So
Hmm.
that was pretty clear.
And if you do decide you want to walk into an area that is off the beaten path, like 8 out of 10 times, there will just be an enemy standing there that will just completely one-shot your entire party, and there's very little you could do about it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's tricky.
And the tell me if you guys disagree with this. I also found the checkpoints to be fairly generous. So like if you did lose a battle, it didn't send you back that far.
Yeah, not a big deal.
Hmm.
Yeah, I remember reading somewhere where it was like you could force checkpoints. You could like
Hmm.
go into your inventory and like switch out a weapon and switch it back or something like
Mm.
that. I don't know if I did that very much intentionally, but yeah, that kind of lends to your point that they're pretty generous with that system.
Yeah, I did notice that the saving icon popped up whenever I did anything in the menu, and I always did that when I was ready to be done playing for that day or night, just to like make sure it saved before I turned the game off. But I never
Yeah.
actually did it to force a checkpoint. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I think I usually
um,
would hit rest on one of the expedition flags. That was what I did at the end of
Yeah.
every play session.
I did that if there was one nearby, but there were some times where there wasn't. I'm curious if you noticed or used this, Will. I did read. I don't know when it went live, so it might have not really been in play for your playthrough either. But I did read at some point they added a retry battle like menu option, so you could just like if you were in the middle of a fight and could tell it was going south, you could just hit retry. Um,
Huh. I mean,
it-
I remember seeing retry after losing, but I don't know if there, and so that might be new. So
yeah.
if I lost a battle, it would say retry, but
Hmm.
I never necessarily quit a battle prematurely.
Gotcha.
I
And I
always,
could be off on some of those details, but I do know they added some option around like exiting a battle or retrying or something that wasn't there at the beginning and when I played it. But yeah, the one you're talking about, the after you lose the retry, that was always there, but I think like a
oh,
mid battle exit or retry is a new thing.
yeah,
If I
and there was a flee option. I maybe did that like once or twice my whole playthrough. Not very often. There was, and then of course, I'm sure this was there for you guys too. It was like bring in the backup team.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Did you guys ever do that?
I did towards the very end of the game because I had focused on specifically 3 characters until I got to this optional content called Chosen Path that gave you a really good pick toe for finishing it, and you have to do a fight with each of your characters. You know, you can't reuse one, so that sort of forced me to create a build with, for me, was Verso and Mako, who I had to that point not used at all. And so, but
Oh
then
man,
after I actually
you didn't use my boy Monaco?
no, so
Minoko,
after
sorry, Minoko.
but after that, you know, once I created a build for him and actually went and got him pictos and a weapon and leveled it all up and everything, then I started actually using the backup team. You know, and I did. They actually helped me finish one of the fights in the Endless Tower. I actually lost. My main team lost, and I brought in the backup team, and they finished it off. And so, but that was the
Nice.
only time that happened. That only happened one time my entire playthrough. So,
Nice. Should we go ahead and talk about the battles? How's that sound?
I'm down.
So yeah, the battles are mostly turn-based. You get 3 characters in battle, and they line up, and you take your turns doing your thing, and it even shows you the turn order, which is nice. So you can kind of plan around that a little bit. And you end up with 5 party members. Each character feels very, very distinct. In a lot of ways, kind of classic RPG, turn-based RPG stuff, but then it also has like a timing element of when you land blows or when enemies are attacking you, you can press a button and to kind of like increase your damage or reduce their damage. That's also been in a lot of like JRPG style games. Well, not a lot, but at least a number of them. But then there's also a parry mechanic, which is fairly unique. Where if you can either block or dodge, or parry or dodge incoming attacks. If you dodge, you just dodge it entirely and you don't take any damage. But if you get a perfect parry, a perfect block at the exact right time, you'll do like a little counter attack. And sometimes enemies will have like a long chain of attacks, and you have to parry every hit to get the counter attack.
Yeah, some of the parry timings on enemies are insane.
Yeah, yeah. The Troubadour is an egregious one. I also think Gross. I have no idea how to say this guy. Gross Tete. He's also got a very insane attack pattern. So the Troubadour would do this thing called Tricky Shot, where he would blow 2 bubbles, and then he would hit you on the upswing with his little flute horn, and then the bubbles would hit you after so he'd shoot the bubbles first and then hit you with his horn, and then the bubbles would hit you, and you had to kind of time that. The Gross Tete guy, every time he gets an attack, he tries to hit you 2 times, and then it goes to 4 times, then 6 times, then 8 times, and then every time he gets a turn, he does it for 2 more until he does it 24 times in a row. And if your team is still alive, you win the fight, and it just ends right there. But it's so insane because he's just like bang, 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 and you're just sitting there breaking your controller trying to block all the Gross Tete slams.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is you can get a Minoko move from him. You can get a Gross Tete move yourself, and then get out there and blam blam your rock, on the enemies. So
and I did.
Yeah, yeah, it was one of Minoko's best moves, I thought. I think it put defenseless on the enemy, which makes the rest of your guys hit a little harder or something like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that one, because I think this game also has like good variety in its enemies, where you get some weird ones like that where you don't fight it the normal way. You just have to dodge or parry all of its attacks until it it self explodes.
But
yeah,
I enjoyed it. It's such a weird thing because it's I guess you can't have the sunshine without the rain, because you first try a new enemy, and you're like, oh my God, they've got like 3 different attacks and I don't know any of them, and then you're just getting wiped. But then of course by the end you've fought so many of the different enemies so many times that, I remember going through the endless tower, and I think that's one of the places that really showcases how much you've learned. The endless tower is like 11, there's like 11 times 3 battles or something in it, and each battle is just a different combination of enemies. And I was surprised by how many of the attack patterns I was able to remember from these different enemies that you fight throughout the whole thing. So it does give you this really interesting sense of mastery once you kind of have a sense of what their attacks do. There was a fight against the last fight in this tower is actually against Renoir and the Paintress, and I still remembered their attack pattern. So I found that fight actually one of the easier ones in the tower because I remembered all their little patterns. So it's an interesting dynamic, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I've always kind of liked that in games that have this timing element. Is exactly what you said of like the first time you get to an area and you're fighting new enemies, it can feel kind of hard because you don't know any of their attack patterns. But then by the end of the area, I kind of like that curve of like getting to a place of mastery once you've got them down pat, and then it's like, okay, I've kind of mastered this area and these enemies now, and they ain't no thing anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts on any of the combat stuff, Nate, before we start talking about like kind of, I guess, the different abilities in the characters and the ways you customize them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to add on what y'all already said. I think the combat system is really fun. I think like a big part of it is just like the moment to moment, the animations, the UI, like all of it just kind of comes together to just makes being in those battles enjoyable, which is super important for this type of game where you spend a lot of time just like two sides lined up against each other, whacking at each other. But in older JRPGs, especially if you go real back to the like earliest JRPGs, like those battles are super sloggy and not exciting, and you are just like selecting things from a bland menu until one side loses all of its HP. And this game has just like learned all the right lessons from however many 40 years of game design that have come leading up to it, right? Like it takes a lot of good lessons in all the areas from art and animation to ability design and thinking about how to use those active time components like you guys were talking about. Like I know people are always quick to compare everything to Souls likes and Dark Souls, but like learning attack patterns was a big thing in those games that like really makes people engage with the combat in a different way, and this game continues that sort of tradition of like you guys were talking about, with like that player knowledge being a key metric that you're growing in throughout the game, as well as your stats and ability options increasing. It's not just about grinding, it is about paying attention and being present in the fights.
But it's also it's like punishing and it's not, because
Mhm.
on the one hand, like, you know, especially towards the end of the game, like if I missed a couple of attacks, it didn't matter what my vitality was. Like my character was just going to be sitting on the floor. But the
Right.
thing is, the game makes it very easy to revive your characters. Like and then of course those revive items, they refresh every time you touch a flag. And so,
Mm.
you can go into, I mean, there were fights I would go into and like one of my characters would go down like 6 times and I would just keep popping them right back up, with those heal items, because the revive items, it's not like a rare thing. You can refresh them. And then after you get a couple of the upgrades, whenever you pick the guy up, he comes back at 100%. And then of course if you get cheater, which we'll talk about later, your first move can be reviving a guy and then you still get a turn. So and then of course if you lose the fight, there's that option to retry. And so although some of the fights were hard, and I definitely spent a lot of time on the ground, it's not so punishing. It's like you can pick your guy right back up, or you can restart the fight, or just like retry it immediately. So I thought that was a nice balance.
Yeah, and I think that does kind of like snowball throughout the game in a way that it almost feels unhinged, like how this game is kind of balanced.
This game's balance is super unhinged.
And it seems intentionally so, right? Like they is not unbalanced and unhinged because the developers weren't paying attention to what they were doing. Like I think it was very intentional that like this game just goes completely off the rails, where a lot of other modern games would have the style of like, we're going to keep things very constrained, we're going to like rein everything in so that everything is perfectly balanced in the way we envision it from start to end, and there's a perfect curve of like power creep for the party and the enemies that like feels very smooth and natural. And this game's like, nah, let's just like throw some ideas in there and mix it all up and like, let it just go, let it go crazy.
Yeah, that was a point I was going to make for sure. Is the early parts of the game, it doesn't feel too wild, but yeah, it just keeps diverging as the game goes on, and like the extremes and like in the later part, like the back third of the game or something, like within the first 10 seconds of a fight, you could get wiped or you could wipe them, and like it can just swing 100% in either direction at any given moment. It's wild. I think unhinged is the correct word.
Yeah.
But that also in a way does kind of like when I think of like the PS1 era Final Fantasies, like you could like those could get kind of unhinged too. Like
yeah, there's definitely an era of RPGs where like breaking the game was kind of the most fun way to play it, right? Like and I think this leans all the way into that.
Absolutely. Which I kind of struggled with that a little bit, like because by the end I came up with a build where I one-shotted the hardest boss in the entire game. Like, and when I say one-shotted, I mean a single attack. It was like start battle, do one attack, he's dead.
Was your character's name Mael?
It might have been.
I heard about this.
There's basically, and I've seen like after I finished everything, I went and looked. I'm like, can you do this with other characters? And some people have like found some solo builds for the other characters as well. But Mael's is definitely the easiest to pull off and probably the most powerful. And like, yeah, like some of those late game pictos you get and like the abilities you get, just like insane. And yeah, you can just really break this game wide open to where nothing is a threat at all. You can just wipe the entire room in a single hit. So like so after I did that, I like went and watched some. I was like, I want to see what this fight's actually like if you don't like use all the tools at your disposal.
It's terrible.
And yeah, it's like, so like the ultimate optional boss in the game, his name is Simon, and like his attack patterns are insane. They like go on forever, and when he gets into the second phase of the fight, all of his attacks are double hits. So like every time he hits you, you have to like parry. It's like a double hit.
And then if one of your guys goes down, he removes it immediately.
Yeah. So there's no reviving people either. Yeah, it seems so gross, and but like by that, you just have so much powerful stuff that it doesn't matter because he doesn't get a turn. You just start battle, he dies, and I don't know, it's wild.
Yeah, I didn't come up with that. I had heard tell of the $1 billion hits or the billion damage hits from Mael, but I didn't really go in that direction. I mean, I think there were certain pictos that led me to believe that it has to do with having some of your other characters die at the beginning or something like that, but I have no idea. So I didn't
Yeah,
really do that. So I didn't have an easy time with Simon. I tried Simon one time, and I was like, no, we're not doing
yeah,
this.
yeah. If you don't have a way to quickly kill him, he's insane. Like I'm sure people do it. I'm sure there's going to be runs out there where people are like super low level and like don't use a lot of the extra stuff. Like the equivalent of like the Dark Souls beating it naked and with a club at level 1. Like there will be people who do that.
Because technically you can do that in this game because everything is parryable.
Yeah,
So
you could play
you
this.
could do it at minimum stats with nothing equipped, and just God, that would be so miserable.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm sure people will do that. I also saw a playthrough because one complaint I did see online was people didn't like the parrying actually and the dodging, and like they thought it was too hard, I guess, or punishing if you don't parry your block or parry your dodge. And then I saw a story about a playthrough where someone played through it and intentionally never parried or dodged, so they just took all the hits and they beat the game without ever using those mechanics. And they were like, yeah, you can still just tank things and still play the game like that way. Or in some cases, maybe.
When I saw that, it seemed like you could do that. At least the first build I saw that did that played on the lowest difficulty and did that.
Oh, okay, okay.
I
Yeah, I wonder
don't
if
know.
anyone's done it on normal then.
I mean, I don't know because I was pretty bad at the parrying. Or at least that, me, I feel like I was bad at the parrying. So I was like loaded up on all the pictos that like gave you, there was one that at the beginning of the turn, if you don't already have a shield, it gives you a shield. There's one that's like if your health falls below 50%, it gives you 2 shields. I had every single picto equipped on all my characters that had anything to do with the shell mechanic. And then there were still easily enemies that like if I missed 2 or 3 parries in a row, I was down. So,
Right.
like, I don't know. I mean, it
Yes.
seems like it would be brutal, but maybe it's doable. I don't know.
Yeah, and were you playing on normal?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I played on normal as well. So yeah, I wonder. Yeah, maybe the one I saw was the same one who played it on easy. So yeah, I'm curious if anyone's done it on normal and not blocked or dodged anything.
Probably have the technology. I don't.
Who can say? Who can say?
Yeah.
I am glad though. One thing I like about this game is because all like the late game optional stuff is way harder than anything on the critical path, and I did complete the critical path before I started getting some of the broken stuff and making the broken builds. So I'm happy that I guess I feel like I did the final boss of the story like without breaking it wide open. Um, I had done some side stuff, so like my characters were powerful, but I wasn't like exploiting broken combos. Um, and then the game very much is like, yeah, for the like super hard optional end game stuff, like just go nuts, man. Just just have at it.
No, it definitely is like fully gloves off once you get to the Act 3 if you're doing the optional stuff. I feel like, Act 1 is pretty constrained as far as what you're able to do, and then you start to get glimpses in Act 2 of like what the combo system of pictos and weapons and abilities allows, but it doesn't like fully it doesn't fully dissolve into chaos until you start doing the optional Act 3 stuff.
Yeah, and that cheater picto that you mentioned earlier, Will, is definitely one of the big ones of just like two turns for every characters is just like that really does feel like it breaks the game. But you also need it for that hard stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, when you have to fight, if you guys remember him, there are a bunch of those sprinkled around. He's
Oh
the
yeah,
enemy
the
that like,
really tall guys that'll eat your
Oh
people.
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like he's such bullshit that like I don't know. I'm like, oh, okay, so he can just get rid of one of my characters. Yeah, well, how about this? Let me go twice in a row, you jerk. You know, and then of course you've got people like what's that one's name? It's like Serpent Fair, the giant
The
flying
dragon thing.
snake beacon dragon thing. and that thing's over here eating all your AP. And so I don't know. I mean, sometimes I feel like I started out feeling like it was like kind of broken, but then, like you said, by the end, I was like, good thing I have cheater for these.
Yeah, yeah,
birds.
you kind of need it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you have cheater for that fight, and if you use the dragon thing, the serpent fair,
Yeah.
yeah, you can have cheater. So like your first, you can just normal attack, and there's all these pictos or luminas or whatever that like give you bonus AP on attacking. So you can do like a single attack and get like 5 or 6 AP or 7, and then your second attack you can do something with it. So it's like it kind of renders its ability to sap your AP kind of meaningless.
Yeah. The one thing that I came up with that I was proud of, and I won't waste too much of our time talking about my builds, but I had a
Yeah, go for it.
Lune build where and one of the weapons that Lune has allows you to create a random stain on a shot, on a free aim shot. And
Mhm.
then there are a lot of free aim things. Like there's one free aim thing that says, there's a chance that a free aim shot can give you an AP. There's another one that says, like, on a free aim shot, you could give yourself powerful. On a free aim shot, you could apply burn. On a free aim shot, you could apply shell. On a free aim shot, you could apply powerful. And then there are other pictos that say whenever you apply powerful, you get +1 AP. Whenever you apply shell, you get +1 AP. And then what you get from Serpent Fair when you beat it is this picto called Energy Master that says whenever you would gain an AP, you gain an extra. And
Mhm.
so Lune has this extremely powerful move called like Elemental Genesis or something, but it
Mhm.
requires stains of all 4 types to cast it. And so I was playing this build where I could probably shoot like 15, 20 times a turn
That's
with my
incredible.
free aim, and then I would just cycle through the different colors until I would get the exact 4 that I needed for Elemental Genesis and then cast it. And it's like this nuke that kind of like nukes the whole enemy team. Like you don't even target an enemy, it just blasts everybody. And
Mhm.
I remember at one point I had I had used CL to give Lune 2 times damage, and then I used my level 3 gradient attack followed by an elemental genesis attack, and I think I took out like 2/3 of like Klea's health bar. Klea is one of the late game nasty bosses, and
Mhm.
I mean that's nothing compared to like the one hit Mael, but I was pretty proud of it, having
No,
come
that's
up
really
with
cool. I,
yeah.
I was actually curious if like what kind of weird builds you guys came up with, because yeah, there's a lot of pictos that like hone in on certain things. Like there's a lot of pictos around free aim shots. There's a lot of pictos around energy AP generation, and it's like you combine those in a way where you could just like shoot off a bunch of free aim shots in a single turn and just like keep going, and that's cool.
Yeah, I did a Verso build that was really all about basic attacks, and but there's a lot of good basic attack pictos. Verso has a weapon that says if you do a basic attack, you get another attack. And then there are these things called Combo Master, where if you equip all 3 of them, then each of your basic attacks has 4 parts to it. It's like block, whack, whack, whack. And then whatever you put on it procs 4 times. So if you put like whenever you hit them with a basic attack, it procs defenseless or it gives you a heal or something like that. Like so you can just kind of do basic attack. And of course the damage is nowhere near as good as like Lune or Mael or anything, but it's kind of nice to just put defenseless on the enemy and powerless on the enemy every single turn, whichever is the one that you're most worried about. Um, the only other thing I'll mention is Monoko has a weapon that allows him to switch to a random place on the wheel whenever he hits with a free aim shot. And I
Hmm.
was using that a whole bunch and like using the catapult Sakapate move and stuff. I really like that one. And there's a
Uh-huh.
move you get from the creation enemy that's pretty decent. It's like Void Blast or something. I don't know if that was the best way to play Monoko, but like, that wheel I think initially I was just like staring at this list of skills and trying to figure out like some sort of pattern. Like, what if I do this move first and then it'll move the wheel this many times? And I'm like, this sucks. Let me just like randomize it, and then I'll just eventually get where I need to go. And so I used the same kind of trick where I put all those Pictos on that like gave me a bunch of AP generation, so I could get exactly where I wanted on the wheel. And then did some, so whatever skill I was using, I was able to use the part of the wheel that enhanced it. Because every skill with Minoko, it's like if you're in heavy, this deals extra damage, or if you're in caster, this deals extra damage or gains you health, or whatever the case may be. So, but yeah. So Nate, do you remember any of your builds?
The main one that I relied on for like most of the game once you get Verso was using a Verso build where I would just dump free aim shots and then use the bonus attack weapon and stuff to do a basic attack and get another turn, and like combining stuff to get to use the free aim shots to just like apply status effects to everything, and then using the basic attacks for like a good big hit of damage on something, and then he'd get another turn, and because of the getting so many basic attacks and getting extra energy from basic attacks, he would start his second turn with like full AP, and so then I could do like a big move for whatever the situation needed. And that was like my bread and butter for the majority of the game. Was like, okay, Verso's got it. I've got Lune over here who can like heal everybody and generate lots of AP, and then I would have Minoko like throw out whatever skill he landed on the wheel that turn.
So is that your kind of main three: Minoko, Lune, and Verso?
Yeah, probably. I mean, Mael is like, I feel like Mael is like the character, like as soon as you get her, it's like super easy to see how to use her, and she's super effective throughout the whole game. If you just like, I'm just going to go to Virtuo stance and like nuke something. So I did that some too, but as I was getting other characters, I liked experimenting with people, and I was just like, Verso can just like status effect everything and like target down big enemies. Lune can keep everybody alive, and then Minoko is just my chaos agent. He can throw buffs out. He can do area of effect things to hit everybody. Like whatever, he's cool. I like Minoko.
I think for the first 3/4 of the game, I was all girl squad. So I was like Lune, CL, and then Mael. And then about 3/4 of the way, I switched out Mael and put in Verso. So then I was Verso, CL, and Lune, and that was kind of my A team when I finished.
I feel like for me, CL was the one that like I looked at when you get her, and I was like trying to make sense of the foretells and the sun and moon states and everything, and I was just like, you know what, like Lune is just generally good, and Mael can just nuke things. I don't really need to figure CL out.
So, I know you said it. Who are your main three again, Nate?
Mostly Verso, Lune, and Minoko.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, CL is interesting because I feel like she had, on average, probably the weakest damage output because it just required, it felt like so much setup for her, and
that was my problem with her.
Yeah, it could yield a big hit, like if you got everything done, or like if you got the right setup. But even the other characters who needed setup, like trying to get Mael into Virtuoso or getting Verso's, I forget what it's called, his ranks up, or getting the element. Yeah.
Isn't that right? Perfection ranks or something.
Yeah, I think that's right. Or getting Lune's elemental stains. Yeah, getting those lined up. Like all the characters require some setup, but I feel like all the other characters, like they're actually being effective while they're getting the setup. Whereas I felt like CL was maybe not. It's like until she got the setup, she wasn't doing that much. I did actually use CL a lot though. Like she was one of my mains for a lot of the game because I think she's very versatile. I think she's one of the best healers in the game because one of the
Grim Harvest.
Yep, that move's incredible.
That was kind of mostly what I did with her is
Mhm.
I would just put foretells on people and then do Grim Harvest, and I had her stacked up with all the healing pictos. So it's like on on heal, I give people AP, powerful, shell, and then like every turn, because once you get cheater, you get 2 turns. So one turn I'd apply the foretells, then I'd eat them with Grim Harvest and give everybody a bunch of boosts, and that was like what
Mhm.
I did with her. That she was just like the let's keep it moving.
Yeah.
But she could also
Yeah.
hit pretty hard with like Dark Wave, I think it was called.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead. I
Is that
interrupted
one of
you.
her? Is that one of her gradients?
Dark Wave, no, it's just
Okay.
like one of
The
these
skill.
like 8 skill point moves that like it hits in 3 waves and it hits all the enemies.
Mm-hmm.
It hits pretty hard.
Yeah.
But then
Her.
she's got this crazy gradient move that you want to talk
Yeah.
about. Go ahead.
Yeah. Her level. I think it's her level 3 gradient is insane because
Yeah,
it deals extra damage based on all foretell you've consumed throughout the entire battle.
yeah,
So like if it's a long boss battle and you've like gone through a couple cycles of like creating and consuming foretell, even if it's for like healing or anything else, and then you like stack up a bunch more foretell and you're in the twilight stance or twilight whatever,
yeah, yeah.
and you use that gradient 3, it does insane damage.
That's
Bonkers.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's cool. So I liked her. I thought she was just very versatile because she had moves that could hit all enemies, apply foretell to everyone. Um, I think she had a couple. I feel like a lot of the characters had bonuses with burning. Um,
yeah.
and she was the best heal. I mean, Lune and Minoko had some good heals as well, but I thought for me, CL's was probably the most effective heal.
Yeah,
And she
that is
had
funny.
yeah, and she had her other key move. I forget what it's called, but it's the move that you target someone to deal double damage on their next attack.
So good. That was what I was just
Yeah,
referring to with
yeah,
Lune. Yeah.
yep. So like if you use it on Lune for the elemental genesis, or you use it on Mael for anything Mael does, like it's sick. So I mean, like that's a move that in a way makes CL for that turn a copy of someone else because it's like if you use the double damage to double someone else's best attack, it's as if CL used that attack herself. So it's almost like a mime or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I
No,
just found her super versatile that way.
yeah, it does seem like she has a lot of good like support options and flexibility there, and I never even like tried to figure out how to use her as a healer. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Lune's got it. She's fine. And I did do a good build with Lune where like I think one of her weapons, I think the weapon that I ended up using would generate light stains whenever she healed. And
Mhm.
then, so I would get lots of light stains, and then I could use the elemental genesis that you were talking about, Will, pretty regularly because the light stains can
Yeah.
match any
Count as
element.
everything.
So
Yeah.
I was just like healing constantly with her, and then throwing out elemental genesis every couple turns.
Bingo.
Yeah. Yeah, Lune. Yeah, for most of the game, I was also the girl squad. Lune's fantastic. I like her a lot. Her abilities. Verso was actually probably the one I used the least. I didn't, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, I didn't really click with him. I did. Question I'm curious for y'all. I did rotate characters to keep them all like relatively close in level. So I mean, in a sense, I did use all of the characters roughly equally. But when it got to like a big boss fight, I would bring in my A team, which was usually the girl squad. Um, did you guys keep all the characters roughly similar level, or did you like leave anyone completely behind?
I mean, I
I
left
did rotate.
Minoko. I left Minoko and Verso pretty far behind. But but then I ended up getting Verso close to the rest of them by, because the last fourth of the game I was just using Verso. Um, and but yeah, no, but the thing is, it seems like they still get experience.
They
At least
do.
in the version of the
Yeah.
game I was playing, they still get experience, but it's not as much as your team that's actually out on the field. So every once in a while, I would have all these points for them. It was so funny because I didn't touch Minoko forever, and so like I finally looked at Minoko and he was like, "I've got 67 attribute points." I'm like, "Okay, buddy."
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I did rotate around and mostly kept people at the same level, but yeah, like whenever they were close-ish, like within a level or two, I would end up reverting back to my like preferred team.
Hmm. Yeah. So I guess one more like combat and character thing, 'cause that is pretty good discussion on a lot of that stuff. Just the whole system and way you customize it, like how actually equipping the Pictos and learning them and like consuming your Lumina points to like equip your skills and like the skill trees for the characters, like just all of like the actual managing the builds and creating them. Like, how did you guys find that part of it?
I do have some complaints around that stuff. I think like this game does a lot of things right, and it didn't really hurt my enjoyment of the game. But like the character attribute points for their stats, like do not care. Like I don't need to do that. I'm just gonna
Uh-huh.
distribute them evenly. Just maybe that matters to people. If other people got enjoyment out of it, then great. I'm glad it's there. But for me, that was just like paperwork I had to do whenever I was at a checkpoint.
hmm Yeah,
Yeah,
I did the same. I distributed them evenly until the end of the game, and then I respect everyone and put maximum points into the damage stat and maximum points into whatever stat their weapon used. Um, and then if whatever left over, I just put wherever. It was just like I respect everyone to just go hard in damage and in their weapon.
yeah. I basically did what you did at the end, but just kind of as I was playing. Like once I had
Gotcha.
because I play like a weirdo, and I kind of looked up. I didn't look up any story spoilers, but I did look up like what weapons are in the game, like, and then I kind of planned a build for each of my characters and made a little Google Doc because I'm a bizarre person.
I love it. Love it.
And then so I kind of knew like, okay, this is the weapon I want to end up with, and so then I would already be putting those points in the stats that I need to. But it was kind of busy work. I felt like the stats weren't all that. That was definitely not the most exciting. It's wild that there is seemingly no limit to Lumina points. That is just crazy. So by
It
the
is
end, I
nuts.
think I had like Lune had like 230 Lumina points for me. I was just like stacking her up.
Yeah.
Um, I did like that system. Sometimes it's interesting, like the number of Lumina points it takes to activate some of the abilities is kind of bizarre.
hmm
Like there are a couple of fights in the game that you have to do one on one, and then there's this really amazing Picto called Solo Fighter that makes
hmm
you do like 50% more damage in one-on-one combat, and it costs one Lumina point to equip.
hmm
And then if you go over and try to do cheater, it costs 40 Lumina points to
hmm
equip. So
hmm
it's sometimes it was kind of bizarre to think about, like, how did they come up with these values? Because some of them are like,
Yeah.
hey, this thing makes my build and it only costs 3 Lumina points to put it on, and then this thing is just kind of generally good and it costs 20, or something like that. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, and my guess would be it's actually they would price the more generally good ones higher because they know you're just always going to have it on, so that like forces you to consider it a little more because if cheater was cheaper, then it's I mean, I think it's a no-brainer anyway. You should pay those 40 points.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like if it was any cheaper, it would even be less of a decision. So my guess is they were trying to force the decision on some of those, whereas the solo ones, and there are 4 or 5 of those that like buff something if you're
get them
fighting solo,
like
which is
hit Gestral Arena or something like that to get all those Pictos.
yeah. There's one of them where like you just permanently have shell if you're fighting solo. One is like your crit chance is higher. I think it actually says you always crit or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
And then there's the generally more damage. So there's like 4 or 5 of those, but it's like you're literally never going to use them unless you're playing solo. So it seems like
yeah.
just the way they balance if you want to play like with a solo fighter, but it
Well,
actually kind
there
of
are a
ends up
lot of
backfiring because it's such a
yeah,
like that's a key part of like the nuke builds, like Mael's nuke build that I ended up building. It's
yeah,
like you couldn't do it without those solo things.
yeah, and but there are a fair amount of solo fights between the different arenas. There are a couple. There's a mime fight that you have to do solo towards the end.
Yeah, actually,
You
one of
know?
the fights I struggled with in the game was a solo one. It was that gestural lady. Um, God, what was her name? Anyway, you keep talking, I'll find it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, it does sound like we all had a pretty good time with that whole system. I mean, I've really enjoyed that system.
Hmm.
There's so many different Lumina, or so many different Pictos, and you can pretty much, whatever you're trying to do, um, you can kind of enhance it pretty well.
I feel like just like the core structure they have with like the weapon types and the Pictos is like
Yeah.
that's what makes the game for me like and just the fact that all the characters play so differently, like they all have their core individual mechanics and ability sets that are
And
different.
I understand the idea of having to fight 4 times before you can equip the the Lumina, but definitely by the end of the game, like, I'm like, "Huh, I wanna change my build. I wanna get this one." I'm like, "Do I have this one? Oh, no? Okay." So then I'll, like, go to some random place with
Yeah.
Esquie that I've been, and, like, maybe I forgot to look in some random corner and get it, and then I would always just, like, jam it on one of my characters and then fly back to, like, the very first area, and then just, like, do 4 fights with, like, little idiots that I can one shot just to get it out of the way. And so it's like, I don't know. At
Hmm.
first, I was like, this is kind of neat. And I remember I wanted to unlock the Lumina with every Picto that I had. And then
Hmm.
they started coming so fast that I was like, nah. I
Yeah,
couldn't.
yeah, it really does in the back half of the game. You just start getting so many of them.
Yeah.
Like I tended to have like one or two slots on the characters I was using was reserved for like learning a new Picto for most of the game. Um, and then they do their 4 battles and then I'd rotate it out. But by the end of the game, like that wasn't even enough. So like I didn't grind in this game except for what you're saying is like I had one or two like big grinding sessions where I just like found an enemy right next to a flag. And it's just like, all right, entire team put on fresh Pictos to learn. I'm just going to fight an enemy, hit the flag to pull him back, fight just do that 4 times, switch out a whole new set of 9, 3
Yeah,
per character, and
that's so
just like
fun.
grind through like a couple dozen learning Pictos.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had a little bit of a grinding session, but I'll talk about that later.
Um, yeah, I do actually have a like some of my biggest gripes in the game are actually with just kind of the interface and managing all that stuff because they have a favorite system in one part of the menu but not in the other, or like when you mark favorites in one screen it doesn't get marked in the other screen. And with the solo fights or like other things, because like I think this game actually a lot of the bosses are so I both like and dislike this because I like when you're actually in the battles. I think a lot of bosses actually have very unique mechanics a lot of times to the point where you might want to switch up your Pictos and your builds. And I think that's really interesting to think about that of like, okay, my normal, like my standard build, I could probably tweak that and it'd be really good for this one fight. But then like doing that in the menu can become a pain. I know I messaged Nate multiple times being like, man, I wish this game just really had like builds you could save so that you could
Yes.
like
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, you could just have like 3 builds per character, like Lumina set builds. So like you could just keep your standard one ready. So if you go to and like maybe your standard one and maybe a solo one or something, and then maybe like a third one that you just play around with when you need it for like a unique situation or something, that would have just saved so much time.
There were certain Pictos like anti-freeze and
Hmm.
anti-charm, like that would really help versus certain fights, but I don't think I used any of them because I was just like, it takes too long
Yeah.
to figure out what I've got on and
Hmm.
remember, especially a freaking Lune when I had, I don't know, 30 different Pictos equipped or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I could definitely talk another hour about all of this type of stuff, and we didn't even touch on much of the side stuff. How much side stuff did you do? It sounds like you did a lot, Will.
I did a fair amount. I think the only things I remember not doing, there might have been one Nevron quest I didn't do. I didn't do there was something like called the painted something. I did do like the gestural
Yeah.
beaches.
What?
No.
What?
You get back in there. You have not finished the
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
Yeah. But I
We are
did
doing this
the
podcast prematurely.
but I sure, okay. But because I mean, basically, the way I do these things, for better or for worse, is like I don't know. I have my little idea of like the stuff I want to get, and so initially I'll just do all the stuff I need to do to get all the stuff I want to get, and then I'll look up and I'll be like, if I hear someone say, "Oh, this area is really interesting," or "This is a really neat quest," then I'll go check that out. But like, I don't know. I didn't hear anybody say anything about like you got to see the Gestrel beaches. I think I went to one of them because there was an expedition log there, and I was very interested in listening to all the expedition logs, with the exception I never listened to the Simon one because I didn't earn it.
Mhm.
But the rest of them I got. But the Hidden Gestrel Arena, the Dark Gestrel Arena, the Endless Tower, the Flying Manor. A lot of the late game crazy stuff I thought was
Mhm.
fun. So I did all that.
Yeah. What about you, Nate? How much sad stuff did you do?
Not that much, honestly. I did. So like, I definitely started this game of like poking my head into all the areas as they opened up on the map and being like, "Oh, this is like crazy, way too hard. I clearly supposed to come back here later." Um, and then quickly realized that there were a lot of those places, and I was like, I'm not gonna keep track of where I'm come back
Mhm.
to later.
Mhm.
And by the time I got to like Act 3, when like the whole map opens up and you can start doing all the stuff, I was like, okay, I'm good. Like I've gotten my fill. I don't really so like I poked into a couple places, tried a couple of like the very easily accessible like optional bosses in Act 3. Um I did not do a lot like, and I didn't look anything up of like what there is or where to go or what was good or what was not good. I just didn't put in the the energy to do any of that. So I was like, I'm good. I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna see credits. I did do all the Gestural Beaches though because I'm a real gamer.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So Nate, tell me about the Gestural Beaches. We have to at least touch on.
They're hilarious and they're garbage.
Yeah. I I did all of them as well, and they are garbage. Most of them involve some kind of platforming challenge, and that is not this game's strength. It is the jankiest platforming.
It's so bad, but I couldn't
And
not do it for some reason.
yeah, I applaud them for like putting multiple of those things in the game because it's so stupid.
Yeah, it's extremely stupid and extremely like, JRPG to have like just awful janky mini games that don't fit in any way.
Yeah.
Like it is in that vibe for sure.
hmm Now I'm gonna get to this
Sounds like I
point later.
really missed out. Okay.
Yeah, you
did,
really
man.
missed out.
God, the hardest one was the one where you were on the rafts and he was throwing stuff at you and you had to
Uh-huh.
parry them back.
Yeah, uh-huh.
That took me more tries than any boss in the game.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I heard the volleyball, whatever that was,
Yeah,
was
that's
very
what I'm
That's
talking
hard.
that
about. Yeah.
one.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like you're playing volleyball on two boats and you
Yeah.
have to parry as you're running around trying to keep him from sinking your ship.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. Okay.
And there's like just enough of a delay. Like in battle, the parry's really snappy, but there's just enough delay in the parry timing on the overworld. It doesn't feel as good as it does in battles. And it just made it
Ugh,
it's annoying.
Yeah.
yuck.
Yeah. I did pretty much everything, and I really liked a lot of the side stuff. I think I think there's a lot of variety, and I mean, I think that's one of this game's strengths overall is just a lot of variety in everything. And it kind of becomes a different, as we've talked about at length, it kind of becomes a different game in the post game with the late game side stuff. So at first I was like, I'm not sure how much I'm going to do with this. And then when I saw like how different it was, I was like, I kind of want to see more of what's going on here. And then you end up completely breaking the game. But yeah, I think we should turn to some narrative stuff.
Yeah.
So this game has a really interesting setup where the gommage, which totally sounds like a mobster term, um, the paintress is painting a number and it's counting down, and everyone that age or older dies, gets erased. And this is Expedition 33 because the new number is 33. Which is also funny because they joke about people who are 32 being like really old because they're the oldest.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're following Gustav and his partner. Were they going to get married? His fiance? I don't know.
I don't
Anyway,
think so, because I think she was like 1 year older than him, right? And so I think they kind of
they
knew
knew,
or something.
yeah, what was coming. Yeah, so she gets whisked away, and then this Expedition 33 is, yes, setting out on the expedition to try and kill the paintress and end this whole brutal cycle, which is pretty brutal. And, like, you know, there's a lot of themes in just that setup of, like, oh, what do you do with your life when you have limited time? Do you try and fight it and break it? Do you just enjoy the time you have? All of that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, I guess what did you both think about that setup?
It's a cool premise for sure. You go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I remember one of the first thoughts I had as I was playing is you get on the beach, of course, and you run into Renoir, and he drops the slam.
That scene is so gnarly. That is like
brutal.
That's like Saving Private Ryan fantasy style.
Yeah, it gets wild. And then you start seeing other expedition people that it's like rather than their whole bodies turning into rose petals or whatever, they're just like almost like shells, like clay shells of people or something. And it really kind of had me thinking about this idea of like, what if bodies in our world somehow, like, I don't know. Like what if when I went to Gettysburg or something and I walked around the battlefields, if like if all the bodies of the people who died at Gettysburg were just sort of like turned into clay and lying there, like would I have more appreciation for like the sacrifices that built the country or something like that, you know? Like I don't know. It's interesting to think about that idea of, you know, for those who come after on a very literal sense. You know, it's like there's so much it's so clear. You know, I remember towards the end, one of the last expedition logs I found were the people who made the handholds there, or not the handholds, but like the grapple points, and and you know, they were like, we're about to go down. We can't really stay up, but we're about to put the last grapple point on, and I know that, you know, it's gonna go better, you know, from here, or they're gonna do something. But anyway,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that you got it right. Like that just like basic pitch of generations of people trying to change their situation and make the world better for those who come after is like a super straightforward but appealing message.
yeah,
That it just kind of works.
yeah, and I, you know, I could kind of relate to those characters. I got really attached to Gustav for some reason,
Yeah.
even though there were parts in the beginning of the game that came off as kind of, certain aspects of it came off as kind of goofy to me. But
Well,
but
he's a lovable goof. Like that's his style, right?
yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to recall some of my other kind of initial impressions, but yeah, it's crazy how flippantly Renoir destroys beach that beachhead crew.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, as you later realize, like, even though these are fully formed individuals, he just sees them as like, you know, these are just other idiotic creations of my wife.
Yeah.
Like,
He's
so
not really
he just
treating them
runs.
like people.
Yeah, he just runs through them. He's like, oh, okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
But
And
then
maybe
we see them all deal with the fallout of that. Like, I thought some of the really good scenes early in the game with Gustav were like him and Lune arguing about like staying on the mission, and like Lune's so cool. I love Lune.
yeah,
Yeah.
Lune is my favorite character in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made her look like a total badass with this. There's this thing you have to do where it's like if you perfectly dodge this Dan Seuss boss, you get like a Dan Seuss outfit with her. It's over in the Frozen Heart section of the game, and it just looks insane. It looks like her body turns red and is covered with silk or something like
Yeah,
that. And so
yeah.
I had Lune just looking like a badass, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't remember all the specifics of this like campfire argument between Lune and Gustav, but that was one of the first times where I was like really enamored with the characters and how they were written and how they were acted. Like Gustav losing faith and losing sight of the mission, and Lune just like lays it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Gustav was all about finding Mael was the argument.
Yeah.
He wanted to forge forward to make sure she was okay because they found some note or some indication of like where she might be, and Lune was just like real. No, we have to stick to the mission. We go here because that's what where the mission says we go.
Right.
And the you're right, Nate. That's one of the early game like performances. We get a couple of these in Lumiere, but this is really the first big one where it's like you don't get a lot actually in video games of like people arguing in a natural way, because like the way video game voice acting usually works is like, okay, some person says a line or a couple lines, then there's like a clear break, and then the other person says their stuff. And this conversation was like really natural with like people like they were like cutting each other off or raising their voice over each other. It was a really like it stood out to me as like a type of argument you don't get in video game voice acting a lot.
You know, one thing that I didn't think about until this very moment is the way that, I think one of the things that Lune says to Gustav is like, because essentially he wants to go find Mael, and I think he wants to like send her back to Lumiere, because I think he somehow feels responsible for her, even though she was fully capable of making her own decision. At least in the game, the way the game presented it, she was fully capable of making her decision to go early. But I think
she is, I guess, just one quick note, and she is noticed like substantially younger than the rest of the crew. Like everyone else is like 30, 31, 32, whatever. They're nearing the end of their time, and she's like 16 or something. She's a teenager. So like he does feel some like has to protect her because she actually has more life to live.
But I do think it's interesting if you think about the parallel between Gustav making decisions for her and then her making decisions for Verso, towards the end, this idea about like, I don't know if you guys feel like there's any kind of connection there, but, because towards the end, and I don't want to hop ahead too far, but, Mael kind of wants to keep the canvas running, although, if she does that, the only way to do that is to kind of decide Verso's fate for him in a way, because the whole canvas hinges on him staying alive. Anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, I didn't really make that connection, but yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, gosh, there's so much we can dig into here.
Yeah. So what was the big event at the end? Is the big event at the end of Act 1? Is that Gustav's death?
Yeah, that's when Gustav dies. I guess one other quick thing, quick aside, because Gustav dies at the end of Act 1. His voice actor is Charlie Cox, who's I know him from Daredevil. He plays Daredevil in the Marvel universe. But he apparently didn't even know what he was voicing. And then like all these fans of the game came up to him like after the game came out. They're like, hey, or like when people would encounter him, I don't know how this happens, but people, or maybe Messenger, I don't know. But they were like, really good performance, all this stuff, and he was just like, "What are you talking about?" He like didn't even know what he was recording voices for, apparently.
That's great.
And he was like, "I should actually go look up what this game is that I was in that people like."
So funny.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else we want to touch on before the end of Act 1? I do really, I guess, just to re-hit on your point about for those come after, like talking about like the handholds being built. I love that world building, and it's like
it's so good.
It's really good. And like it's kind of simple in some ways, but it's like I feel like in our normal everyday life, like we don't think about that, and at least I don't, about like how much stuff has come before us and has like gotten us to where we are today. And it's like, or think about like how we're going to leave things for those who come after.
There's some quote. It's like it's like something like true. I think it's like either true maturity or true goodness or something is planting seeds that grow into trees whose shade you will never enjoy. There's some famous quote like that. Have you heard that before?
I have. I don't remember the exact quote, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and this game puts that under a microscope with the nature of the gommage and all that, because they know that no one expedition, like it's not like the first expedition is going to have a chance. And if they didn't leave stuff behind for those who come after, no expedition would have a chance. It's only by building on expedition after expedition that they stand a chance. Anyway, the end of Act 1, Renoir shows up and just kills Verso. Why he didn't do that sooner, I don't know. But
Gustav, not Verso.
Oh yeah, sorry, Gustav. Why he didn't do that earlier, I don't know. But what was your guys' reaction to the end of that act?
I was pissed off. I was super pissed. And then this was the one part of the game that, or maybe one or two parts of the game that didn't really work for me, because there's a lot that seems to hinge. The game kind of expects you to have conversations with the other three, like, but it's weird that they immediately give you control of Verso after you've only kind of just been introduced to him, and then they expect you to like have conversations. And I remember being back in my camp and being like, well, Verso doesn't know any of these people. Yep. Verso is like 100 years old. And so for the longest time, all I did was like, whenever I got back to camp, I was like, man, if I was those girls, I wouldn't want to talk to this goober. And so like I would just talk to like Minoko and Esquie. And then so I had Minoko and Esquie up to like level the 3 relationship or something. And then at the end of the game, when I finally realized that like the gradient moves are tied to the relationship levels, this was the one time I did the grinding. I had to go back in my camp, and then I had like 15, 17 conversations with everybody just so I could actually get them up to the levels to unlock their moves. But like, I don't know, for some reason it did not seem natural for me to start up conversations with like CL and Lune and Mayel with Verso's old ass, and I think I was also just annoyed because, I thought his mechanic was stupid at first. I was like, oh my God, perfection. Okay. So, I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't get down.
I thought it was really weird to have like Verso be your avatar character, like you're the one you control. Cause like, I don't know, he was just so different. Like, I think in my opinion, Mael's kind of the main character of this game. So it's like, why don't you control Mael? And even in the third, because each of the acts is named after a character. Act 1 was Gustav, Act 2 was Verso, and Act 3 was Mael. But even in Act 3, if you go to the camp, you still control Verso. So it's just like
a little weird.
Yeah,
it's so interesting because it makes you wonder whether they feel like the canon choice is playing with Verso at the end. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah. I actually don't really like the relation stuff in this game, since they added like it's not really a romantic component, but like you do, like, if you get all the way up with CL and Lune, those are the two, you can like you can hook up with them. And it's just like, I don't think this game needed that. Like, I think their relationships between all the characters, I think are good as is. But then they like kind of gamify it in that way. And like you said, Will, it's like, oh, you kind of do want to get them up because you want the gradient attacks. But then it's like, I don't know. But then you're like controlling Verso, talking to these people who like, it feels kind of forced. I guess I don't feel like it really needed. Like, I feel like the characters are interesting enough that they could have develop the characters and have interesting conversations between the characters without gamifying it in that weird way.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I've always thought it was goofy when the relationship level increase little pop-up comes in.
Yeah, it's just very silly.
Like, this is very strange. They're trying to go after like a Persona style,
and Verso, they understand each other better than they ever have.
Yeah.
Relationship level 6. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because as I've mentioned, like this game pulls from a lot of different influences, and like this is where I feel the Persona influence, because you have relationship levels in Persona as well, and also the other place I feel the Persona influence is like the battle UI design is very Persona. So like I don't know if this was one they were thinking about in that way or not, but I think this game could have done without it personally.
I mean, I think they probably were thinking like a little bit along those lines of the Persona games, and probably just like they wrote the characters good enough, well enough that like they just didn't need to have the meter on it, like you said, the gamey parts. Just like let it be what it is.
Because the conversations and the writing are all fine and great, but the meter stuff is just weird, and especially that you're Verso.
Yeah. I did think it was a little weird, like the hard switch to Verso being the perspective character when you literally don't know anything about his perspective. Like it is a tough pill to swallow, like in the middle of the game.
I think either Mael or Lune would have been better choices as characters. You kind of like knew their perspective from the beginning of the game, like you've been with them the whole time. I think it would have felt like a more natural switch, but
and it had even become like, but even before Gustav dies and Verso shows up, like I had already kind of gotten an inkling that like whatever's really going here that they're kind of foreshadowing but not really showing. Like Mael seems like the center of what's going to be important because of the way she shows up in the mansion, and like the other characters are like visiting her and like freezing time and stuff.
And the burn-faced Alicia girl or whatever. I mean, they keep making it seem like, there are a lot of scenes where like time will freeze, and then Mael will see her and Renoir, and you recognize that there's something else going on with her.
So like by the time Verso even shows up, I had already kind of decided that I thought Mael was probably going to be the most important character in the game, and then like it would have made more sense to just swap perspective to her and let her carry on Gustav's kind of mentality and outlook on things as the perspective character. But I don't know, maybe that would have made Verso not feel central enough. Maybe it would have been too hard to like integrate him in it if you did. I don't know, but
no, I definitely agree with all that for sure. Then, so I guess going through Act 2, it's Verso does play a key role because he knows a lot about this world, and Minoko does too. So like, Minoko doesn't come into play until Act 2, right? Yeah. So
I think that's right.
So they kind of like know things and can kind of like help the party get closer to the Paintress. And Verso is also not telling them really everything he knows. He's keeping a lot secret from them, which does kind of like, they do get angry about that when they like learn how much he was keeping from them.
Apparently he kept Sori from Esquie or something like that. Like
yeah.
Like it's the most powerful one.
Yeah.
Loser.
I mean, I really felt like throughout Act 2 and especially right at the end of Act 2 turning into Act 3, when all the big reveals start happening, like Verzo like really came in and like manipulated the hell out of everybody, like in like not a super cool way.
Yeah.
Not chill, Verso.
Not chill, Verso.
Yeah, I mean, and as we learn later, yeah, he has a personal goal, a thing that he wants, and yeah, he will manipulate people for it.
Yeah.
I didn't get a ton out of the Axon stuff. Some people
No.
fought Cyrene or whatever and were like, God, it was so beautiful. I started crying. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I don't know. And then you fight those funky masks and you have to answer that question. It's like, are you a sad boy? Are you a happy boy? And you have to answer it right or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I don't care about the Mask Man or Cyrene. I mean, they were cool spectacles and they were cool fights, but I don't know that I personally was able to, somehow slot them into a story. I don't know.
I mean,
Maybe I didn't really learn enough
I'm sure
about
if
it.
you dig in the deep lore, they like fit into the themes somewhere. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm like big bads. We gotta kill them so we can get thing to do
Yeah.
the thing.
You gotta get them. You gotta get them dead. Because you gotta get enough. What's that stuff? You gotta get enough chroma to forge the sword to pierce the berry.
Yeah, right.
You gotta.
Right.
Somebody's gotta.
Yeah,
Yep.
Act Two is definitely the one that felt the most like, okay, we're like coming up with tasks to do to like be able to create dungeons and bosses and stuff.
Yeah.
That like I won't say it felt like wholly unrelevant because like there was a lot of character development that happened during a lot of this, but in terms of like the big capital P plot, like this was probably the slowest act for that part.
And that little twist with what's he called, the caretaker? Like when you realize like who the caretaker actually is and why he's helping you, you're like, ah.
I had a point early in the game where I was starting to realize like this game's going to have a lot of big twists and turns that I'm not going to be able to predict. And I was like, okay, so I know the Paintress is not going to be the final boss. Who do I think is going to be the final boss? It's probably somebody they introduce early in the game who's kind of on the sidelines and you don't really see. I was like, I bet the caretaker is going to be the final boss of the game. I remember thinking that early on.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but also kind of not right.
Yeah, kind of not.
Yeah. So, anything else we want to talk about before we get to the Act 2 end / Act 3 beginning?
I don't think so.
No.
I'll give two shout outs.
Well, one thing I'll mention is Esquie and Francois. That was the funniest part of the whole fucking game to me.
Yeah, that was probably one of my shout outs is Francois is hilarious.
When you first get to Esquie and he's like, I need to get this rock, and Francois has it. And then you go beat up Francois, and I think Esquie says something like, ooh, you got whooped or something like that. I died.
Any scene involving either Esquie or Francois is gold, and then put them together, and it's perfect.
Esquie is the most quotable character in this game for sure.
Yeah, he's great. They're great. They're a great pair. The other kind of random shout out, which I didn't actually find this till Act 3, but I'll say it here anyway, is my favorite journal entry was, I forget what number expedition it was, but it was the buff crew who like didn't want to do, and they were like older, they were like 50s or 60s, like they were in their 50s or 60s, and they're just like, we don't believe in weapons and magic, like we're gonna do this like how humans are meant to be, and they just trained and focused on getting buff and punching things with their fists. And that was very funny.
Oh man.
Anyway, all right. End of Act 2, beginning of Act 3, we get a whole bunch of reveals, and learn a lot about the nature of this entire world, how it's a painted world, how
they're not counting down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how Rin, yeah, there's all this, and this is also a very common thing for like that era of JRPGs is just like all these revelations that flip everything on its head and everything, and
You get to what you think is the big bad, and wait,
mhm.
not everything is as it seems.
Yep.
Like there's more. That's very classic.
hmm Yeah, and I guess how'd you all find all that? I guess I'll say up front, I found it kind of confusing for a while, which can often happen
Yeah.
with this kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
I had to sit with it and like kind of try and piece together things and like I don't know, like it. And I'm still not even sure I fully understand all of it because it is confusing. Of like, okay, there's two Maels and two. There were two Versos. One of them's dead. There were or two Renoirs. Two. Oh, I forget the mom's name, the paintress's actual name, but and it's like, how did which one's which? When did different ones come into play? Like, I don't know, like all that stuff was kind of hard for me. Like, I got the overall like vibe and like kind of the intent
Right.
of the through line, but some of the particulars like I found very confusing.
Yeah. I mean, I was certainly a little bit. I was pretty sad, really, because like, especially when they show you returning to Lumiere and then all of you getting gamaged
Mhm.
Oh my
because
god,
as,
that scene is so brutal.
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, the Paintress was painting who she could save rather than who was
Mhm.
about to die, who she was going to kill. I mean, that was really rough. But I don't know that I think it's entirely important for you to
Yeah.
like. To me, I think the implications are more compelling than the details. It's to
Yeah.
me one of the things that this fit. Like, there's a lot of pieces of media that this made me think of, especially coming from a little bit of a different context than the two of you. But one of the things that I spent a lot of time thinking about was the film Inception. Um, and to me, there's a lot of interesting overlap there. This idea that you're kind of existing in someone else's dream. You're trying to this idea of, is it worth it to exist in this sort of dream world, and do you lose anything by staying in this dream world rather than reemerging into the quote unquote real world. But there are always people who are like, do you think the top stops spinning at the end of Inception? And I'm like, that's totally beside the point. Who cares?
Right,
And
right,
so,
right.
and so when I think about the actual details of, like, what are the rules of the canvas? And,
Mhm.
I don't know if that's as important to me as just sort of some of the implications on, how you live your life and how you spend your time and some of the things like that that kind of emerge as you progress.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and I mean, I think it's very clear. Like they they have this idea of how the world works and all the details of the people in this kind of operatic story that you kind of are able to unfold if you want to, of like the characters that are involved that aren't even really characters in most of the game. um, but
Mhm.
but I think all that's constructed around the thematic ideas in order to prop those up and make those clear, and the lore crazies out there can like dig in and figure out like the specifics, because that's, if that's entertaining to them, that's fine. And it seems like that stuff is there, but for me, I'm with you, Will. Like I was there for like the thematic resonance of all of it, and like how people deal with grief and move
Or
on from
don't.
that, or don't, or
Yeah.
right, and like how that strains every relationship in somebody's life when they're like going through a grieving process, and who has like authority to choose things for somebody else,
Yeah.
like who gets to decide like who's a person. Basically,
Yeah.
like all of that
Yeah.
stuff is so like, it's so clear and so potent in the way they construct the starting with the ending of Act 2 up through the endings of the game. Like it's just like that stuff is what hits.
Yeah.
There's a moment in the game, Soma. I don't know if you guys have either you played that, but there's a moment in the game Soma where you realize that you finally get to like a mirror. It's like a first person game, and you finally get to a mirror, and you realize that you're like sort of a consciousness that's been put into like a robot. And then, and so I guess in some ways it's interesting in this game that you play as these characters that are like Lune and CL are essentially like, they've been imagined into existence by the paintress, but they are no less real as a result. In fact, they're some of the most compelling characters in the whole game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, all of this is so interesting, and I definitely agree with both of you that the particulars are not nearly as important as the ideas and the takeaways. And I was also thinking because like Will, you've compared it to a couple other films or games, and like I think there's a lot to this game's credit. I think it's like in some ways it's like in some ways you could like describe the themes of this game in like 2 or 3 sentences, really,
Right.
if you boil it down. But there's also so much richness baked in that it does like contain a lot of things that like connect to other pieces of art, and it's like it feels like it, I don't know, encompasses a lot of ideas, I guess, about the human experience, so to speak. And like it is easy to see other parts of all sorts of things in this game.
Yeah. I'm going to taint it for just a second because I'm going to compare it to something you dislike. But I also thought a little bit about Spec Ops when I played this, because one of the main through lines of Spec Ops, in my opinion, is this idea that like working with incomplete information, and to me, the twist in this is very much like, it reminds me of this idea that you're working like, you everybody has this idea that the paintress is the key villain, and that's the idea, and that's who we're going after. And then kind of the fact that you're working on that incomplete information. I also thought about What Remains of Edith Finch a lot while I was playing this towards the end, because there's this idea in What Remains of Edith Finch that's like, if your real life is cut tragically short, or it's marred by tragedy, why not imagine it on a grand scale? And to me, some of these characters, in this family were so visited upon by tragedy, and the canvas represented this sort of like exploratory negative space where they could kind of live out a life or a dream or a fantasy, um, and using that as a way to cope with the brutality of their existence or something like that. But yeah, those were some of the pieces that I ended up kind of comparing it to as I was playing, as opposed to like old JRPGs from the 90s or anything like that.
Yeah, and a lot of the JRPG comparison tends to be more in tropes and structural stuff, not as, I mean, some thematic stuff is there.
Yeah.
I'll actually call out a couple of things. The this is both a mechanical and a thematic thing. So mild spoiler for Final Fantasy V for anyone who cares. There's a character in Final Fantasy V who's one of your core 4 party members, and they die partway through the game, and someone comes in to replace them and inherits all their skills and equipment and everything, just like Gustave Traverso did here.
Yeah.
And then other thing is that I kind of want to touch on is this game. Not many games deal with suicide, really, and this game has 2 characters, like 2 of your core party members, who attempted suicide. I guess Verso, you could argue maybe he wasn't, I don't know, near the beginning, but CL very much did, and in a weird twist of fate, you learn that it was Esquie who saved her because I guess everything has to connect back. But yeah, I mean, those are tough moments, and then and Final Fantasy games have dealt with suicide in the past as well.
It's interesting. It reminds you of like it kind of reminds you a little bit of like assisted suicide. Like not that that's what it was, but there's this idea of if you know that you have an end that's coming, why not kind of go out on your own terms? You know, like why can't I go out in the way that I want to go out? And I guess since all the characters in this game know exactly when their death is going to happen, barring some catastrophe. I mean, most things, all things being equal, this is how you're going to die, and this is when you're going to die. I think there probably is a tendency to sort of grasp your own fate in some way.
Yeah. All right, the endings. What do you guys think?
Well, who'd you guys pick?
I went with Mael's choice, and I made the wrong choice.
That's so funny.
Man, I sat on that screen for a long time when it makes you make the choice.
Yeah, me too.
Because I feel like it gives you an idea, like you understand their motivations at that point, right? Yeah. Like at least I felt like I understood their motivations of the two characters, but I did not feel like I had complete information about the reality of the impacts of their decisions and what that was going to be.
And I think that's intentional too, because I had
it probably is intentional. Yeah. It's probably intentional. So I think it would be very easy to make the wrong choice as you did.
I mean, I suppose one could argue there's no right or wrong or whatever, but I feel like I feel like I made the wrong choice, guys.
I went with the Verso ending, and then I looked them both up I looked up the other ending afterwards. And I was like, oh, I'm really glad I picked that.
Yeah, my L ending is rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a debate. I was talking to my friend Tim about this, and when Verso looks at Mael and basically sees her face in basically melting away like the when she got corrupted, is Mael actually becoming corrupted, or is she no different than the paintress in Verso's eyes? Like for instance, if Lune or CL would have looked at her at that moment, would they see those sort of like her eyes hollowing out and her cheeks turning to gold and those types of things that sort of clue you in, But yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of an interesting piece, because I guess there's this idea that, of course, the longer you stay in the canvas, the more corrupted you get. But then there was also this idea that what actually corrupted the paintress was her grief. But then, of course, there's this idea where Renoir, he tells you that at one point he was trapped in the monolith for like so and so many years. And so, and it's interesting because, I used to think of games, I still do in a lot of ways, as sort of like a way to explore infinite worlds. You know what I mean? Like I think I've heard this quote before about people who read books that says like, if you're a reader, you'll live 200 lives before your own is done, because you'll get to experience all the lives of your characters. And I feel like there are times that I feel that way about games. But then also, especially as developers have gotten better at exploiting psychology, there are certain games that are so good at providing these dopamine hits, and they provide them so quickly that you can sort of get kind of trapped in them, and depending on your personality type, some people do get kind of trapped in them. I think the first time this happened in our industry really, really extensively was like with World of Warcraft. You'd have people who were so addicted to these dopamine hits that they were dying in internet cafes. And so this idea of like, to me, I don't think it's a stretch to kind of think about, the canvas as a type of video game, you know, like it's an imaginary world, but one that is immersive, you know. Um, but yeah, I don't know this. So I guess I started thinking a lot about this idea of like being corrupted by spending time in this world. Because certainly, if you're someone who has gotten tremendously addicted to video games, the pace of dopamine hits that you get in your day-to-day life is never going to compare to the ding 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 of a level up, get a new item, complete a quest, you know, become the head of the thieves guild, you know, whatever it is, you know. So I don't know, I think that's sort of an interesting thing to kind of reflect on. But I also made the choice that that Justin made, and I don't
Wait,
know
who's
if part
Justin?
of it. Oh yeah, Fowler Flex mode, that guy, and yeah, I also made that choice, and I don't know if there was a part of it for me that was thinking about like. I think it's difficult. Like, I think it's one thing to be born with a disability, but I think it's another thing to be disabled and then to remember what your life was like prior to that disability, to know exactly what you've lost. And so, you know, when you see Mayel, you know, deformed and voiceless, and what she's able to do, or I guess it's Alicia technically, what she's able to do in the canvas, you know, certainly, you know, Verso has to pay the price for her to be able to live that life. Um, you know, but I don't know. I don't know that I felt like it was. I also never went and watched the other ending, so I don't. I just was like, well, this is what happened in my world, and that's how it went. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I did go watch the other one. Yeah, like
yeah,
the whole thing is interesting because it's like, I mean, I there's some joking and some truth into me saying I picked the wrong ending because I mean there is an aspect of we were talking about like, oh, are the people in the canvas real people? And you know, if you choose the Verso ending, all of that ends, right?
yeah,
So you're kind of ending a lot of people.
yeah.
Um,
RB, are you saying the one real reality Verso, you know, is worth the lives of all these created people or whatever? I don't know.
right.
It's interesting. You know, I was thinking about this as I was playing this idea that like, you know, in a sense, you're making the decision that like a god would have to make. You
Hmm.
know?
You
Yeah.
are.
Hmm. Yeah, there's definitely that like God, like the people who make the paintress and paint everything, like they kind of are gods for that world. Um, and then on the flip side, yeah, all the decaying stuff and like I mean I mean all of the family tragedy stuff is like what's underpinning this whole game. Um, and it is I'm sure there's a lot to dig in there of like I'm not a psychologist or anything, but like how what a child's death in a family just like crippled this family for life. Well, except maybe Clara. I don't. She's a whole other thing. Um, but yeah, just like Mael, like even the thought of leaving the canvas and facing that reality was just like too much. Like she didn't want to do it.
Yeah, it comes down to a really hard choice, and I wrestled a lot, and I feel like what I was coming down to that made me make the decision to take Verso's ending was like, for some reason I felt like it felt harder for me to make the decision to like keep him trapped in this state that he had been trying desperately to get out of, other than like where on the flip side you're letting Mael, like, yes, you're taking away this world that's super important to her, but she's gonna get a chance to kind of like reconnect with her family, and I was hoping that that would be the ending, and that is what it kind of hints at.
mm-hmm.
But it is like somebody loses no matter what.
Yeah, yeah. And like the Verso ending feels like I don't know how to word this. Like that's the face the reality ending, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's the stop hiding from what's causing you pain and
Yes.
and you're going to have to like become whole. You're going to have to face it and you can't hide from it forever. Um and it also saves Verso. And then the flip side of that is, well, what happens to Lune and CL and all them? I don't know.
Yeah,
I do kind of feel like
yeah.
watching both endings, the Verso ending does feel more positive and more like healthy for not just Verso, but also Mael. Like it feels more healthy for Mael as well.
I think that is absolutely the case. Watching both.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, you're about to
Yeah,
say
and
something, Will?
but I guess I I also kind of wonder a little bit about like, yes, Verso, you know, wanted to go, but like I don't know, especially after having all those conversations to level up my relationship status. I was thinking, I'm like he didn't have, he just had Monica's dumbass. He didn't have like Lune and he
I
didn't have
agree, Colin
CL.
dumb.
I mean, their interactions when you did their interactions, to me, their interactions were just so like silly and broy, which doesn't mean I don't know. Maybe I'm being too judgmental, but like to me, the type of interactions that he was able to have with the girl squad, you know, would are the type of interactions that could sustain someone, you know.
Mhm.
But and then of course there's the idea of like, when you talk about like the idea of the real world, you say, well, this is facing reality and going back to the real world. But, in a world where, in a world that is totally indistinguishable, you know,
Yeah,
from the real world, it's like, which one is the real one, or
Yeah, I
I
get
don't
what you're
know.
saying, and I don't think I like would make any argument that like, well, the painted world is less important because it's not quote unquote real, but I think it's the facing of the reality of the emotion and like the grief and like that part of it felt more true to me.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think
I don't know.
I think I'm just thinking about this now, and I don't know all the details of how the painted world works. Like, can they come in and out of it? Like, would there be a way for Mael to be able to leave the painting and really face the trauma and like heal the heart and all that stuff, face those hard things without completely erasing the canvas, and that be a world that still exists and can still be, I don't know if visited is the right word, but it's like, I don't know,
Yeah,
it's still there. It's like a
I
healthy
think.
engagement. Because like Will, you were talking earlier
Yeah,
about like kind of getting lost in like World of Warcraft or whatever, and it like consumes your
yeah,
life. And there's a healthy way
yeah.
of engaging with art and these alternate worlds that we live in, that we spend time in,
Encounter.
whether it's through
Yeah.
books or games or whatever. So like, is there a way for her to heal the trauma that she needs to heal, but also have a healthy engagement with the art instead of like just living in it forever?
I think the breaking point there is that as long as that world exists, because Verso painted it, he has to stay alive.
Stay in it,
So
yeah.
for that world to continue existing, Verso has to continue living. And
Yeah.
so it's tough to think like, well, Mael can step out and he's got to just sit in
Yeah.
there, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So that doesn't
but
really
yeah,
work, but so that,
yeah,
yeah, I
but no,
mean
I hear what
both
yeah.
endings do have sacrifice in it for
Yeah,
sure.
and I think part of it, is interesting. I think anyone who has had, and not to necessarily put myself in this category, but I think that like anyone who has had like a brutal accident, like I have an uncle who, you know, uh, became a paraplegic when he was in a Jeep accident, when he was like 21, he was like in the prime of life. And then now he's in a wheelchair the rest of his life. Like
Yeah.
if he could go, it would be amazing to give him the chance to go and live in a world where he had the use of his legs again, like where he could go and experience what that life could have been like. And so I guess when I think about, I don't know. I can't help but when I think about Alicia and think about her, like, and of course, they could have painted her, it might even have been like, let's say for instance that she had like locked in syndrome or something. Let's assume that like Alicia was in a coma but she still had consciousness. That would probably make the situation that much stickier.
Yeah.
But I do think that, I guess when I think about her and how she can't really talk and she's just like and then she's got that crazy ass deformed burned face, I'm just kind of like, man, why doesn't she deserve to have like, or why can't she have the type of life that she wants to have, or something like that? I don't know. Some part of me was being rebellious about that, I guess.
Which I think is fair, and I think you're supposed to feel that tension for sure. But also, like, if she is a paintress, like, does it have to be Verso's world where she gets
That's
to
fair.
have that?
That's fair. That's a good point.
Like, she can make her own world.
Ada doing, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't remember. It's been
But
months.
but
Like,
the world that she creates would not have a piece of Verso's soul in it.
I think that's true, and that is still a loss. But like,
right. But no, you're right. You're right. That's a good point. Sorry, I interrupted you, Flex. My bad.
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah, I was just gonna say, do they still have the ability to paint worlds after the Verso ending? I don't know if that was
believe
addressed.
so.
Yeah,
it seemed like. I mean, Verso said. I remember Verso saying to her when they were, dealing with their ending, like, and she was all upset. He was like, "You'll be able to paint another world at some point."
yeah. So,
and I'm assuming he's being truthful about that.
I would have to think so. And it's the one with the real Verso's soul is lost, and those characters that we came to love, like Lune and CL, they are lost. But
and that does matter.
Yeah, it does matter, yes. But she can also still paint and still engage with that art in hopefully a healthier way.
Yeah, and hopefully her and her parents can like move on and accept some of that grief and what happened, and become more of a family again instead of fighting each other for eternity and a cursed painting.
Yeah.
This podcast is the first time I've considered the fact that she could paint another world, and that does change things a lot for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think we should get to wrapping up this podcast. I think we could talk for another 10 hours about everything in this game. That's been a good discussion. Before we get to final thoughts, two things. One, we didn't talk about how gorgeous this game looks and how great the music is. So I'm just going to say those two things just straight up. This game looks great and sounds great.
Great game.
Great game.
The only thing I didn't mention is there was a period of time where I didn't really know where I was supposed to go next. Like, I wanted to go into the Frozen Hearts, but like I needed to gain like 20 levels. So then, I don't know, that was kind of something that happened to me. And so then I was like wandering around. I was like, okay, what can I actually fight now? And I think it was like, I don't know, I think I was like high enough level to defeat the Paintress, but not high enough level to survive in Frozen Hearts. But that was just one little pacing nitpick that I had. But I definitely agree with you on the artistic design of this whole thing. The music didn't jive with me as much as some games music does, but it was definitely very a lot of very intentional choices with the music.
Yeah, I've actually appreciated, because I've continued to listen to the soundtrack after finishing the game. And for the first like half of the game, I wasn't that into the music. And then I started getting more into it as the game went on. And I think it punctuates its like key story moments with the music really well. And then as I've listened to it more, I've come to appreciate the leitmotifs used, like the way it like certain moments and characters are connected by similar musical motifs. And it's subtle when you're playing the game, but I still think it works well. Like, maybe it could have been done a little better to stick with me like while I was playing the game, especially in the first half, but I still like the music overall.
In relation to you talking about the music like punctuating big moments, like one thing that that I love about this game is like when it decides it's gonna go hard on a scene, they're just like, we're just gonna leave it all on the field. Like,
Yeah.
they are not shy about like ramping everything up to maximum intensity for the big cutscenes, and it's great. I love it.
Me too. What are any parting thoughts, Nate?
It's a very good game, and I enjoy it every single time when you get on Esquie to swim, and he goes, "It's time for swim."
Yeah,
that one's good.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, my favorite of that is I'm the fastest ball. That's my favorite thing.
This game's great. I mean, we talked through a few quibbles. Probably the main thing I would change is the sets for the Luminas that you can swap between. And I kind of have a love-hate relationship with how busted the game gets at the end. I like it in some ways and I don't. Everything else about the game is really strong. And even with those are both fairly minor quibbles in the grand scheme of thing. Like, yeah, this is a really fun game, really fun. Really nice to see like this style of game done this well and be like a unique thing, a unique property from a new team. New to me. I don't know if they made anything before this game actually. And
for it to be a huge success is like kind of heartening.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the breakout hit of 2025, and you love to see it.
You love to see it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of creative. A lot of the zones you go to are just very, very creative. Sometimes it feels like every zone in this game is more creative than most every zone in some other prominent designed by committee AAA game.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's very, and I don't know if being part of a small team has anything to do with this, but like, I think this game you can feel the creator's hands on very, very directly more than other big AAA like style games. Like this feels like it was made by. It sounds like denigrating those other games, but like it feels like it was made by people and they had their hand in it and like put silly things they want. Another way this harkens back to like older JRPGs. This game is at once both deadly serious with very heavy topics and also the dumbest game, like tonally.
Yeah,
at times.
Absolutely. Whiplash is
like
real.
I felt like they rode that line pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they definitely do.
Yeah, be honest, I can be really hypersensitive to that sort of thing. And like there are games that I don't like that have good clinical reception because the tone gave me whiplash. But something about this, I guess it was earnest when it needed to be earnest.
Yeah.
I think it's earnest. I think it's earnest all the time. It's just sometimes it's being earnest about being dumb.
Yeah. And a lot of those like 90s era JRPGs had just really silly stuff in it, even when they also had really heavy topics in it. And I don't know, it worked really well. They did it really well here.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, guys, it's been
one last thing.
All right, let's hear it.
So this is spoilers for Final Fantasy VII. This is going to be the last thing in the podcast. So if you don't want any spoilers for the original Final Fantasy VII, podcast over. We're done. But real quick, Nate.
Yeah.
This game has 3 acts.
Yes.
Final Fantasy VII has 3 discs. What happens at the end of disc 1 in Final Fantasy VII?
Yes, a major character dies. Okay, I see where you're going.
What happens at what's kind of a through line of disc 2 / near the end of disc 2? What happens? About Cloud's regaining his memories, right?
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, so it's more like gaining perspective on the main character and understanding where they come from and how that. Yeah, I see. Okay.
And Mael at the end of Act 2 regains all of her memories and what happened and like becomes herself again, right?
Yep.
In Act 3 in Final Fantasy or Disc 3 in Final Fantasy 7 is basically just the end boss and a whole bunch of
the whole world open to you. Yep, you can go do whatever you want. And
same thing.
And final dungeons right there. Yeah. Is this Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3?
Pretty sure.
How intentional do you think that mirroring that structure almost identically was?
I bet if I had to guess, I would say it's probably not as directly intentional as they sat down with the plot structure of Final Fantasy VII and said that worked. Let's do that. It's probably not that, right?
People love the game. People are all about Final Fantasy VII. You know,
but I bet these are people who grew up playing Final Fantasy VII, right?
yeah.
And like, so like those sorts of like structural pacing, like big ideas about how to structure a story and like do those big twists and fit it within a larger world and narrative, like that stuff I bet is just embedded in them from their love of the genre and probably some specific love for Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. Anyway, I had to get that.
That is very funny.
And with that, we're going to close out this lengthy podcast. Thanks to anyone for listening to this lengthy discussion about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I am Flex. I've been joined by Will and Nate. And thanks for listening. We will see you next time on the ATACS podcast.